This is going to be a two-part series. The first part is going to talk about what zone photography is and the various photographs that we may be able to capture using this kind of photography technique. The second part, which will be a follow-up video, will go into details of how to use Leica lenses and various other lenses for zone photography. It is often a misunderstood concept that zone photography must be something that is difficult, something that is hard to understand. But once you understand the general concepts, then your skill set and your knowledge about zone photography and how to use Leica lenses for their optimum performance becomes very evident, and it becomes very easy. So what we are going to do is we're going to look at a series of images, and each of these images we are going to discuss certain aspects of those images. Now, we could go at lengths and talk on hours about each photograph and discuss certain details about it or certain aspects. But what I want to do is give you demonstrations and the general concept and the ideas on how zone photography is applied. Now, the first photograph we have is one of the scenes when I was filming a short documentary on Amaro wines or Amaro liqueur. Amaro liqueur is something that is produced mostly in Italy and has been a very popular drink in the United States and Canada and North America, namely because they are used in cocktails. And this is a photograph of a bar, and the gentleman behind me is a gentleman who's a barman, is very knowledgeable about drinks, and we are filming here. Now, what I wanted to show you is several things. We used an aperture here, and this was shot with a 35 millimeter, and what you can see is that there is a very long area where it is in focus, and there's a part that is out of focus, but it gives the background a very distinct look. You can see what the whole scene is about, and this is what I'm talking about when I say you can use the background to tell a story. Without the background, it just be cameras and us standing there. What we are having here is we are clearly seeing that this is a bar scene, and what we have in the forefront are these bottles, these objects that are out of focus, yet it gives the definition of what this subject matter is. And also we look into the middle ground, which is the middle area, and that is where the camera and the lighting is, and we can see some very strong exposure there. And I left this without interrupting the lighting exposure here to give you what it looks like straight out of the camera. And I wanted to have some highlights instead of having shadows. I could obviously pull things out of the shadows and the highlights if I wanted to tweak it, and that is a possibility. But here what I wanted to do is give this overall sense of what the bar looked like and the scene looked like. And as you can see, the middle ground where the camera is lit, my face is perfectly exposed. The objects behind me are perfectly exposed, and that is the main object here. This is what we are attempting to do. We're not so concerned about what the camera is filming, because if you put the emphasis there and everything is in focus and is not highlighted, then what will happen is our eyes will start wandering within the frame trying to figure out what it should focus on. And here we can clearly see the focus is on the camera and me filming. Of course, the gentleman behind me also adds a look, and we can see that he's there, he's part of the background, he is part of the storytelling. And of course, if we look further into the distance, and we see that the image gets out of focus as we go further. Now, this is shot probably at f4, f5.6, and at 35 millimeter, this is the kind of look we will get. Now, if I was further away from the camera, then the subjects will, of course, be in focus, because we will be attempting to align our zoning to take that photograph accurately, but will be a lot more things in focus. So as you get closer to the lens, this is the effect we will get. And I like getting closer to the lens and using a 35mm because it does not distort, and that is a very key element when using lenses. And if you are going to use a very wide lens like a 24mm or a 21mm, you have to be very clear about what you want to include in a photograph. Here, as you can see, the photograph is so well framed that there is nothing extra on the outside edges of the frame. So if you look at it as a composition, it is a very successful composition. You can see my placement on the screen as something that is on the 4/3, and the rule of 4/3 or rule of thirds applies here. And as you can see, this is a well composed image. And if I were to go any wider, I would lose a lot of the beauty of what this photograph captures. Also, I would take away from what we are attempting to do. If I went a little narrower, then I would lose a lot of what is in the foreground, and the foreground adds an element. What you see on the lower right hand corner, for example, those bottles give an element of beauty, and those metal flasks on the left corner also gives a beauty of to this image. And it's for this reason I truly like what this image provides. Also, do notice that this is a low light circumstances, and this is one of the things that makes this image so beautiful, because the upper portion of the image is in darkness, which is something that we would like to have because we don't want our eyes to keep wandering away, and our eyes are kind of drawn to what we are seeing as the composition. And if you notice, the line that is running the white wall or the ceiling that runs is meeting at exactly the other line that is coming from the top, going all the way to the window, and they're crossing exactly where the monitor is. If you can see it, it's placed right there, and our eyes are automatically drawn to that as well. And the lines, if you see anything from the background, the windows and everything else, they're all pointing to the same thing. Again, we are using compositional lines. You look at the bars, shelves, they're also going towards the subject matter, and this is something important, something to take into consideration. Now, the second photograph we're going to look at is the barman, and we can see he's taking a drink. He's in focus, and what we wanted to do is give this kind of special look here, because you can see the little bottles that are lit in the bottom adds to the element. We can see it's a bar and the gentleman's drinking, and we can see on the left hand side the Amaro bottles, and that gives it. But anything else beyond that we don't want to include, especially things like the camera and everything else. But we want to also give the idea that this is a filming scene, so we can see the monitor on the upper right hand corner, and that adds an element of beauty. Now, I kept the background a little bit inside, and this is important because, as you can see, it gives a depth to this image. If it was just plain black or it was dark, it would just take away from the element that this is a three-dimensional space. And this is one of the reasons I like this image very much. And also notice how the color gradations and the tonalities that are in these bottles and the colors that are there. This is a classical Leica look. The colors are beautiful, the skin tone is beautiful, and we can see that this is in the moment shot. It's not posed, it's not something that is being put together to make it look good. It's shot at that very moment, and that is what a lot of zone photography is to capture the moment, and this is what we are attempting to do here. I think that in a certain way we have captured the moment. And again, notice where the lines are. The lines are along the 4/3 dimensions, and the rule of thirds applies here where the gentleman's place. Again, the opposition we can see the lighter side, which is where the gentleman is lit, and the darker side where the camera is lit, and there's black and white, the dualities. Again, I would like you to notice where the lines are running. The bar right behind his head, the ceiling panel or the object matter runs and crosses the other line, which is right behind his head, and you can see our eyes are drawn to that triangular shape, and you can see the triangularity there, and it's beautiful. And everything else that is unimportant is in the dark, and this is something that I think a lot of photographers miss out, is to put the right composition in the right manner. Now, going on to the third photograph, this is something that I wanted to share with you. See, the top part of the image is the unimportant part, but we want to put that in there to give the perspective, and we have done so. What is important is you can see the bottles in the background all lit up very well. It's in focus, and we use the 5.6 here, and you can see that there is a source of very bright light, and that is almost something that most people will be very afraid of putting into a photograph, because it will overexpose or blow out the image. But it gives this kind of beautiful look, the flare look and the flare thing that usually happens. Of course, we didn't get a flare, we get a kind of a white glow spot, and it gave this kind of beautiful imagery to this photograph. And you can see your eye can scan left to right, and there's a beautiful symmetry and balance here in this image. And this is the type of thing that you can use. If I use a shallow depth of field here again, we would not have the bottles in focus, and that would have taken away from the image, because the middle part of the image, as you can see, the gentleman and myself, we are not fully well lit, although we are in focus, because of the glare that we get from the image, from the light that's emanating from the middle. Also, look at the forefront. There is a 3-layer imagery here. As you can see, the layer in the middle is well in focus, but it's almost out of focus because of the lighting, and the foreground is out of focus, but it gives and tells the story. Again, we place the Amaro bottle onto left hand side, and it is sort of there, and it will grab your attention because it is set apart from all the other bottles in the background. And I think this is a very telling story of what you would want to do, especially if you are either capturing photographs in the street or scenes where there is a congregation or gathering of people, and this is how you will put the image. Of course, you have to know exactly what you want to highlight, what you want to put, and we can see here we are highlighting the circumstances, the event that is happening. So going on to the next photograph, this is a scene we shot in a Zulu Records in Vancouver. The gentleman on the left and the lady in the that's looking at the records is our musicians. The gentleman who's playing with the turntable up above, which is almost in the center of the screen, is also a musician, is a drummer. And this here is a record shop, and what we want to tell is, I wanted to show in this image how much depth you can get, how deep the image can go, and how beautifully it can help the composition. Especially your eye will go straight in the middle, see that this is a music shop because the gentleman is listening to music, and it draws our attention right into the middle. And then, well, as our eyes start to wander around and look at things, we'll see that on the left hand side again, rule of thirds applies, and we'll see the lead singer in the image. And this is a beautifully composed photograph in my point of view. And we also have something very interesting. The foreground, which is a little darker, the middle ground is more highlight, and the background is more highlight as you go into the depth, and that gives the image a depth, a beauty, and it gives a tunnel look. What you can see is, if you look onto the top left hand side, you'll see the lines kind of running, and towards the end of the image, towards the center of the image, and it kind of draws your attention to the center. And this is what we wanted to give the idea of. And this is the zone photography technique that was used here, because we wanted to include a lot of things in focus, yet we didn't want to exclude things that we felt were important. So we have the lady in focus, we have the gentleman in focus, we have the background in focus, and this is again shot at f5.6, and it gives us beautiful imagery. Again, what I would suggest to you, if you're doing this kind of photography, be careful of the lights. You see, the subjects are well lit, especially the lead singer and the saxophone player. They are lit under the light. The gentleman in the middle is lit as well, and everything else in the image gives a sense of depth and beauty to this. So going on to the next image, this is another band we are doing documentary on. As you can see here, we kept a lot of things out of focus because we wanted to kind of put emphasis on the singer and the guitar player, and we kind of wanted to get a portion of the image in focus and the rest of it to tell a story. Again, we use a shallower depth of field f2.8. Here what we can see is that it is a beautiful environment, it's nice, but yet some of the image, the ones that are not so important, is in the shadows, and it gives this beautiful character to this image. And also what we are seeing is our eyes are drawn to the third rule of thirds again here, where the lead singer is placed. And also we can see that this is a kind of a live session. It has an element of beauty. And again, look at draw a line diagonally from the upper left hand side to the lower right hand side, and you can see half the image is in dark and half the image is in the light. So you have a juxtapose of colors and light and imagery here, and this is something important. A lot of people think that they must shoot at f8 or f11 or f5.6. I will tell you, you can shoot at f2.8 and get that beautiful imagery, and especially if you're using a wider angle lens like the